Awesome. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure to be able to share about how AI and technology can be used to protect our waterways. So let me try and just share my screen. Uh, just let me know if it's up.
So,
Yeah. Okay, sorry, can everyone see the screen? Lovely. Okay, awesome.
yeah.
So today I want to talk to you about AI, robotics, and a little about sustainability, right? So how can we actually make the environment and systems better using AI and robotics? So brief intro to myself. My name is Sidhant. I like to view myself as an ocean warrior, right? I want to protect the oceans. But my background actually is in robotics. So I spend a lot of my time building robots and sort of different kinds of machines that help make the environment a better place. I've also worked a lot with MakerBase. So, in fact, the photo at the bottom is a coral reef mapping robot that I built with MakerBase. And I also have some underwater cameras. You can see a robotic fish. This is just some of the stuff I've worked on in the past, right? And through this work, I started to kind of explore the ocean space and while I was doing all this work, I noticed a huge amount of ocean plastic wherever I went. And so I really started to think, like, how is the situation this bad? And what I learned is that every year there's 8 million tons of plastic waste that enter the ocean. And that's plastic alone, not just any kind of waste. Only plastic is 8 million tons. So that's a huge amount of waste. And I like to see or imagine that the ocean is like a person or a living thing. And so if you think of it that way, then ocean plastic can be viewed as a disease, as an actual epidemic. And I think we should view it like that, because that is how it'll help us to approach the problem and really solve it correctly. So we started to explore how actually people were trying to solve this problem. And if you look at how waste is collected out of the water today, really one of what's considered one of the best ways is to just use boats and nets. So if you see this photograph, you can see that there's some people in a boat with some net, and they're trying to pull the waste out by hand. And this is how they do it in Indonesia. And what we found out is you can't even use motorboats in a lot of these locations, because motorboats have propellers, and the propellers actually get damaged by the waste. The waste gets stuck in the propellers. So the best way to clean is to manually use paddle boats and take it out with nets, which is super inefficient, and really does not scale. If you imagine the amount of waste, and it's really not practical for us to do it this way. So this picture, by the way, was in Bali in Indonesia. And when we came back to Hong Kong, I noticed that in Hong Kong, the government contracts these kind of petrol and diesel powered boats that go around the water and clean the waste again with a net. And actually these boats are creating pollution, so they're burning fuel, and so they're actually creating pollution while trying to clean up pollution. And it's kind of funny. We did some math, and they're basically creating more pollution than they're cleaning up, right? So we looked at this, and where we were in Hong Kong, we were like, okay, we have to do something about this. There has to be a better way. And that was kind of the inspiration when we looked at the impact of plastic waste. When we looked at the current methods, we realized that there's something that we need to do. Plastic waste has huge local impact in terms of health problems. People who eat fish from that water have health problems. There's environmental damage in a lot of places. The industry is affected. And at the global level, this plastic enters the ocean. It breaks down over time into microplastic, making it almost impossible to remove. And then it's eaten by fish. And then if we eat the fish, the plastic enters our body as well. And so this is our solution. It's called Clearbot. And so Clearbot is combining robotics, artificial intelligence, and of course boats, to kind of come up with a better solution to the ocean plastic problem, or at least collecting the ocean plastic out of the water problem. So our story starts off in Bali in Indonesia, and we started interviewing people who are collecting the waste out. So on the left is a startup that was actually collecting the waste out with nets in Bali, and on the right were two surf shop owners. And so these guys are renting surfboards on the beach, and they actually go out and clean their water every day, because if their beach is not clean, then people don't come to their beach, and they lose money and they cannot make a living. So we started working with them to understand how we can do this better. And actually, you can see the very first Clearbot, they're holding it in the picture on the right. There's just a 4 aluminum pieces, some old water bottles, is how we started off with the idea. So in Bali, we started to prototype. So this was the very first Clearbot. It's just one solar panel, some aluminum pieces, some net, and you can see we're using a drone to drive it forward and back. So it's very, very low tech, very, very easy to make. No technology yet, and we found that actually this was quite successful. So in Bali, we had a good reception. People were very excited. You can see this is a local snack shop owner. So he's on the beach and he's like cleaning the water in the morning. So he's quite happy with our boat. He's like, hey, I like what you're doing. And then we came back to Hong Kong and we were trying to think, okay, how can we scale this? And we saw 3 or 4 basic problems, right? The first is approachability. This means that a lot of AI and a lot of robotics is very difficult to understand. It's very scary to some people because they don't understand how the machine works or how AI works. So we have to make AI and robotic solutions very easy to use, very friendly, and very approachable. And so this was the first step, which is how do we make it more approachable? The second is autonomy. So for this to scale, because there's limited manpower, very few people available to clean up the water, instead of having 3 people drive one boat, we asked how can we have one person drive 10 boats? Only then this makes sense. And in order to do that, you need to have some robotics, some autonomy. Uh, and that brings scalability. And the final piece is intelligence, which is how do you know you're really collecting waste and not collecting something else, right? And so that AI comes into the picture, right? So AI can actually help us differentiate between objects. It can take input from the camera and help us differentiate between objects. And so that was the goal, to then build the next stage of Clearbot. And the vision was that we assemble these Clearbots wherever we need. We can deploy them to the water. They can collect plastic automatically. And once we're done, they come back to shore and we wait. We wait for them to go back out again. So that was the original concept. Now, one of the first challenges or the first roadblock we hit, we'd made the boat. You could see that first kind of scrappy boat we've made. But actually, to build the AI, we needed to have data. So we needed to have pictures of trash so that we can train the AI on how to recognize the trash. So how do we do this? And there was no public data set available at the time. So we actually work with some NGOs in Hong Kong, and we had students go to the beach and take photographs of each piece of waste. And then the students would help us to label the waste. So here you can see someone's labeling a plastic bottle or a straw. And like this, we were able to train the AI actually to know, oh, what is waste and what is not waste. So at first, the humans put in the information for the robot and helped it to learn. And then eventually the AI started becoming quite good. And you can see over 2 years, we actually built so many different versions of this robot, right? So we made 8 or 9 iterations before we started to get it right. And finally, about 2 years ago, actually no, 1.5 years ago, in June 2020, we launched the full-size Clearbot. This is our current product. So we replaced these old gasoline power boats to clean the water with cleaner, greener machines. And for those of you who like gaming, we are building these boats in partnership with Razer. So actually, Razer is the one that gives us the cool design for it. So yeah, and the solution itself is completely battery powered. So the advantage of battery power is you can actually chip with solar panels. And so the boat can go out, it can do all the cleaning work in the day. And when it comes back, you can charge it with solar panels. And so there's zero emission. There's no pollution at all in the solution. The other advantage is because it's autonomous, because it's self-driving, it is actually, there's no need for any manpower. And even if, let's say, somebody wants to have a supervisor for safety, then you can have one person supervising 8 or 10 boats without a problem. So if you imagine that the Hong Kong government, for example, today has 100 people available who are doing this work to clean the water. And today with the 100 people, they can only have 30 boats. Well, with us, with 100 people, they can have 1,000 boats. And so that is how we are trying to add value and really bring some more practical solution to the ground. And we've been talking a lot about AI. So how is the AI actually helping us? So you can see the AI is running on the front camera and the back camera, the AI software. And it is helping us to identify all the different kinds of waste. So we are able to see what waste is coming into the robot, and we're able to see what waste is collected by the robot. And we're able to then give all of this data to our client or whoever is, asking us to clean the water. For example, we give it to the government or some private companies. And this actually helps us understand what kind of waste is in the water. And this is very important because, for example, let's say, we can say, oh, there's so much plastic waste in the water. Why don't we just ban plastic? It's so easy, right? But actually, for the government to be able to put these laws, they need to have data to prove why this law makes sense. And so, actually, collecting this data on the ground with the help of AI really helps the government to be able to bring in better laws to make a difference in the process. Also, interestingly, so we started off by doing trash collection, right? And so you can see the photo on the left. That photo is actually in Wanchai Harbor, and you can see how much garbage collects in Wanchai Harbor every day that we're cleaning up. But soon we started to see that, oh, actually, people want us to clean oil, and people want us to clean foam, and people want us to do surveys and even move cargo without emissions. And so, slowly starting off by trying to clean ocean plastic, actually, we are now making the ocean greener in other use cases as well. So, we are providing a zero pollution solution kind of to many different use cases, right? And many different clients. So this is just some examples. We are helping the marina. So those of you who live around Tuen Mun, you can go to Gold Coast and see one of our boats there. We're using it in the Gold Coast Marina to clean up waste. We are cleaning up foam and water treatment plants. So a lot of the dirty water from our houses, it goes to these water treatment plants, and sometimes it gets very. There's a lot of foam developed because of the bacteria, and so our robot can go and using AI we can clean it up, right? We are in if maybe some of you live around Kaitak, that area. So we have a boat in the Kaitak River. So the government's building a kind of tunnel and a bridge in that area, and our boat goes and does inspection and actually cleans all the water in Kaitak River as before it goes into the typhoon shelter. Um, what else? We worked on some land reclamation sites. So, as you know, in Hong Kong, there's always some kind of land reclamation project usually going on. And so, in the land reclamation site, again, they used to use a lot of boats, petrol burning boats. And you can see in this picture as well, there's 2 or 3 staff that are used to clean the waste from the water. But with our solution, the Clearbot can go and clean all the waste automatically. And so yeah, we are working with many different people, and so I'm very excited to share maybe in the Q&A session if you guys have any questions specifically. And also, just to wrap up, so we are trying to expand our Clearbot. So we started off our journey in Hong Kong, but we really want to have a global impact. And so we're taking our AI robotics and impact journey out of Hong Kong now. So our first place, we're actually, it's a huge geography with a lot of polluted water. So we are trying to come to India and also clean the water here, and then hopefully expand out to other countries like Indonesia, Philippines over the next few years. So I hope for today, your takeaways. First, why is AI useful in the environmental space, in the water space? AI can help us to reduce cost, and AI can help us to do the same job without having that much manpower, right? AI can also help us to analyze data, which is very difficult and painful to do for human beings to slowly look at all the data. But with AI, we can look at all this data and understand actually what is really going on in the water, right? And finally, when AI is combined with robotics, we can actually create kind of artificial resources. So, for example, today there's only so many people and so many boats available, but with AI and robotics, we don't need that many people. We can do things quite autonomously, quite simply, quite easily. And so, when combined with robotics, AI can help create kind of artificial resources. And finally, the impact is always tied. So all the SDGs are tied to each other. So if you start cleaning ocean plastic, actually your impact will be much bigger than just cleaning ocean plastic. So we've already started doing decarbonization. We've already started doing all kinds of developing new technology and innovation. So by starting with one problem, you start solving many other problems. So for those of you who are interested to work in this space, I'd say just start. So, yeah, thank you so much, and looking forward to your questions.
Yeah, thank you for Sidhant, and not just for the presentation, for all the like environmental protection work you have done. And I want to invite all the participants. Any questions? I see a lot of typing. I think it's a long question for a lot of people. Yeah, Alex typing. Maybe I have a question. How can you start from very small, like just a prototype, to scale up? Oh, actually, answer Alex's question first. What's the battery autonomy of the boat? Alex has some questions.
Sure. Hey, Alex. So, well, in terms of first the battery, the boat is actually battery powered. That means it has batteries on board, and then you can use electric power, like so for example, solar. We use solar panels, and then we can charge up the boat. And then after 4 hours, when the boat is low on battery, it kind of comes back to shore, right? So it comes back for recharging. And so that is the idea. And in terms of autonomy, basically the boat can run on its own. So if you just give it the GPS location of where you want it to drive, then it kind of goes on its own and it's able to zigzag around and clean all the waste and come back. And we even have features now where if there is another boat or some other object in the water, then it can go around that boat. And we even now have features where if there's some animal like a duck or if some kind of bird, then it'll see it and it'll stop. It'll wait. So that hopefully answers the battery and the autonomy part.
Okay.
Sorry, you also had a question on how you can start, right? So well, I think I also showed some pictures of how we started, right? And
Mm,
I think it's really even the smallest thing counts because really when we started, as I said, we used a drone. We just stick it onto a frame, and then the frame is made from some old aluminum, some net, and some old bottles, right? So I mean, I can tell you, anyone can make that. It's so easy, right? And so I think really it's just a matter of start somewhere. And I also think it's very important to show other people what you're doing. So for us,
mm,
not only did we build this prototype, but we showed a lot of like people, oh, like, look, this is what we made. And some people will believe in your vision and they will help you to go to the next stage. And so
mm,
for us, every time we start with a very small one, and then you can see over 2 years, we made some 8 different versions, right? Every time we make a new one, somebody says, oh, this is pretty cool, and then they help us. And many people see that, oh, in 1 year there's so much improvement, and then they help us even more. So I think just start somewhere and keep showing people what you're doing, and you will find the support.
nice. I will share that with my students who want to solve microplastic as well. Okay, Joe want have a question as well. So,
Yes, Joe,
oh,
I absolutely remember you. That was a great trip.
To
Hey,
see you again. Alright.
okay, okay.
I think I put up a photograph on the first slide of the coral reef mapping robot, and actually Joe was with us on that entire trip.
Yeah.
He come in with his dad, and we had a lot of fun in the Philippines.
Bring back a lot of memories when I saw that photo, the
Yeah.
bamboo version.
Uh, community. All right. So somebody's asked a question around the initial community buy-in process that the team undertook. So I can talk about that. So I think, when we're doing a technology that is so public, one of the big challenges is whether people will really accept it and whether people will really use it. And so for us, the story first starts off in Bali when we first built that very first prototype. We were actually talking to the stakeholders. We were talking to the local surf shop owners, the people who are like on the beach who are cleaning the water every day, right? So I think that's the first step, which is you actually need to take the community opinion into account when you build the product. The second side was when we started working on the AI. And that's where the NGOs actually became very helpful to us, where they had a lot of volunteers who were available to kind of help us out and to help us understand how the community can play a role. And most of the people who are working with the NGOs are already committed to this problem, right? So therefore, it's not, you don't have to really push them very much. And then finally, once we had the AI and the robot and the product ready, the last step was actually getting actual community to adopt it, right? For example, government, property companies, and then local communities. So I think with this part, it's really a matter of showing them the advantages. Like we push people like this. Most neighborhoods, you have a garbage truck. You have a garbage truck. It comes to your neighborhood every day and it cleans the garbage, right? But if your water is dirty, you don't have like a water garbage truck that cleans the water every day for your community. So that's kind of how we pitch to people that see this is really important. And honestly, in most of the communities where there's already the water is dirty, they're already looking for some kind of solution. So I think at each of the stages, this is kind of how we spoke to people and got community buy-in. Awesome. I see a second question from Alex. But if there's a clear sky, can it stay in place to recharge instead of coming back, considering power and time is needed to come back? That's a great question, Alex. So actually, if you see the first Clearbot, the very first one I showed you, it had the solar panel on the robot, right? The problem was we realized that Well, in order to power the motors, the thrusters of the boat, the electric motors, you actually need quite a lot of power. And so you would need quite a big solar panel to be able to run those motors. Now, for that to happen, our boat would have to be much bigger. And actually, that's not a good thing for us, right? That only makes it more complex. So what we figured out is if we have a smaller panel, the size of the boat, it's not going to be enough to actually run this boat. And it'll only give us an additional 20 to 30 minutes of battery life on a 4 hour run. So instead, what we figured is that, hey, if you're going to run 4 hours and you're only going to get 20 minutes extra with a small solar panel, instead, why don't we put a big solar panel in the docking station where it's much easier to put a big panel and you don't have to move that giant panel around. And then the robot can just come back. So you're right that in order to come back, there is power and time spent. But we solve that in two ways. One is we can extend the battery life. So you can just put more batteries on the bot and, well, you'll have 8 hours of battery life. But also, I think putting the panels on the bot actually does not give you that much of an advantage. So you'd rather spend 20 minutes coming back, recharging, or maybe swapping a battery pair than actually lugging around a giant solar panel on the bot.
I think Alex is typing in the second questions. Yeah. And I really agree with you, Sidhant, that when you solve one problem, other people find you for the same problem, like solving the sewage treatment plant. It's very encouraging because I used to work for the DSD to build sewage treatment plants.
Oh,
And my
wow.
solution really solved a lot of problems, like solving the foam, it was a big problem. Yes. So I encourage all the participants more questions and yes. Okay, Alex, thank you. About maybe I will ask one more question for my students. One of my students want to solve for the microplastic, and then we will have a discussion that microplastic is not floating; it's actually in the middle of the ocean, or even like you cannot filter it or it cannot collect that. So, what is your goal to? Do you just want to solve for plastic, or you're going deeper to microplastic as well?
Sure, that's a great question. To be honest with you, at the moment, we are not doing microplastic, right? So because at the moment our view is that if you look at how we maximize our impact, basically if we put these boats in rivers, which is where the waste comes from into the ocean, then we're able to collect way more than if we were actually in the ocean itself, right? So kind of we've been very conscious of maximizing the impact because we have a small fleet, right? So at the moment we're very focused on kind of rivers, estuaries, shorelines, so that the waste doesn't reach the ocean in the first place. And at the moment we are not looking at microplastic. However, so there are actually a lot of nets that are available that they call microplastic nets. Actually, I'm sure maybe some of your students have used them, and you can basically put them behind a boat and it'll actually filter out the microplastic. The challenge is doing it at scale, because if you imagine that this is so deep, this is basically like a giant fishing net. So it's very difficult to capture the microplastic without capturing fish and then other ocean creatures. So I think microplastic is a much more difficult problem to solve in terms of collection. But really, what we have to do is prevent it from turning into microplastic in the first place. So, as it is a big floating on the surface, we clean it out first before it gets the chance to then break down and turn into microplastic. So, that is kind of what we are focusing on today.